On this episode of Gameball College Kickoff, we're going to recap what was championship weekend in college football. In our second segment, the 14 playoff has officially been set. We'll talk about, did the committee get it right? We'll explain that. Also, former Memphis head coach Mike Norvell tasted him at Florida State. Was this a good hire? We'll explain that. And of course, speaking of the 14 college playoff, we'll break down those matchups and we'll tell you who we think is moving on to the national championship game. What a better way to find out than right here on Gameball College Kickoff, and it begins now. What's happening, everyone? Welcome to Gameball College Kickoff, where the football season never ends. I'm Marcus Young, Genius Jenkins.
It's your boy, Michael Riley.
And always holding it down for our brother Luke Hartnett, who could not be here on this episode. So we're going to hold our brother down like we always do. We're going to kick things off with recapping what was championship weekend in college football. The Oregon Ducks upsetting the Utah Utes by a score of 37-15. Pretty much ran the table with this one, Mike. And those 15 points all came in the third quarter. Speaking of which, Oregon was all over the place in this matchup. Baylor and Oklahoma in an overtime thriller, 30-23 would be that score. We'll talk about that a little bit further here in just a moment. The Georgia Bulldogs, LSU. I'm not going to lie, I was kind of surprised with this one in particular because I thought it was going to be a little bit tougher matchup. Joe Burrow did his thing, threw for 4 touchdowns, completely shut down the Georgia Bulldogs. They scored 3 points in the second quarter, 7 in the fourth, and that's all she wrote from there. But LSU 37-10, SEC champions. Virginia and Clemson, no surprises there, obviously. They ran the table. Clemson did what Clemson does. 62-17 will be that score. Ohio State and Wisconsin, we'll talk about that one. But that tandem of Justin Fields and J.K. Dobbins is something special. And we'll talk about how special they were in that huge win and that huge comeback. On top of everything here in just a moment. We're gonna back things up and go to Oklahoma and Baylor. Mike, how would you explain how Oklahoma was able to get it done in overtime?
Well, Oklahoma was able to pick up where they left off against Baylor, but it was a dogfight all 4 quarters of the game. It was back and forth. 1 point, Oklahoma was up by 10. Here comes Baylor clawing, warring back. It was just blow for blow, back and forth. It was just one of those. It was a heavyweight fight. And when it came to overtime, Jalen Hurts led the crew, and they was able to make plays. And CeeDee Lamb, he's going to be a top 10 draft pick for a reason.
I agree with that.
That boy is bad, and he's an unselfish player, too. That's what you like about him. And overall, it was just, at the end, Oklahoma's defense didn't play the greatest, but they was able to do enough to get it done, and they was able to do enough to win, and now they're in the 14th playoff for a reason. So give it up to Oklahoma. Unfortunately, Baylor came up short twice, so they got to hit the recruiting roll hard and see what players they can get, but what hurt them most is losing their starting quarterback for the game, and that was a blow. I'm not taking anything away from other quarterback, but Brewster or Brewer, where his name is, that was the heart and soul of Baylor offense. So you kind of felt like their heart dropped a little bit when he got injured and couldn't come back, but the other quarterback did a pretty good job, but Oklahoma was able to do the job better, and now they're in the 14th playoff and Big 12 champs once again.
All right. We're going to go from Oklahoma and Baylor, and we're going to go back to the Ohio State-Wisconsin game. Mike, 21-7 was the score in favor of Wisconsin in that first half, and then Wisconsin gets shut out in that second half. Mike, how did Ohio State adjust and ultimately dominate that second half and ultimately win?
Well, the first half, Wisconsin won. They was able to run the ball effectively with Jonathan Taylor and the crew, and that offensive line, you have to say that offensive line in Wisconsin is not at least one of the best. That meat and potatoes, but Ohio State's meat and potatoes offensive line took over in the second half. But in the first half, Wisconsin was all over Ohio State, making it tough for Chase Young to get to the quarterback and get to the backfield to stop the run. And defensively, Wisconsin, they had a good game plan. They was harassing Justin Fields in the pocket, just surrounding him, making plays, playing gap assignment football, staying home, stay contained so you don't break your chain. And Wisconsin, I believe that they were the only teams who was able to get a lot of pressure on him and get sacks. And the other teams could do it, but they figured out in the first half. In the second half, Ohio State just turned on that switch, was able to go. And once that tight end scored that one-handed catch for a touchdown, it was momentum changer right there. Just kept it going. Then they got a 3-and-out. Then they was moving the ball down the field. But Justin Fields missed the open throw to his receiver for a touchdown. It was a little pressure, but I felt like if he would have just stepped to the throw a little bit, just settled down, he would have hit his guy for a touchdown, so I had to settle for field goal. Then the other receiver stepped up big, and Taysom Hill, I think his name is, he's the all-time Ohio State leading receiver, and he was just balling. He had a game of his career. So get him going. The defense stepped up big, and when Chase Young wasn't able to make plays because they focused on him, the other defensive players, the front seven, had stepped up, and they rose to the challenge and did that. So overall, they were just getting turnovers and led to points, and they just rolled back, and now they're in the college football playoff.
All right, more to come talking about Ohio State. That's going to do it for this first segment. Coming up, the 14 college football playoff is set. Did the committee get it right? Mike will explain that. Also, former Memphis head coach Mike Norvell, head football coach now at Florida State. We'll talk about whether or not that was a good hire for them as well. Stick around. You do not want to miss that. Gameball Calls Kickoff returns in a moment. What's happening, everyone? Welcome back to Gameball Calls Kickoff. Now, Mike, I got to ask you, with the college football playoff being set, you got LSU, Ohio State, Clemson, and Oklahoma. Did the committee get it right, first and foremost, with the rankings?
Yes, they did. LSU was the number one overall deserving of the rank because they had the toughest schedule, and they averaged over 30 points a game against their opponents, except for couple of them, but they beat Texas, they dominate Florida, they dominate LSU, even though it was a shootout. They dominated Texas A&M. And Auburn. There's so much teams that they beat in the SEC. So it'd only be right LSU would be the number one overall seed, And just the way and the style and confidence that they had, the swagger, and they're going to be a tough team to beat in the college football playoff. Ohio State should be at number 2, and you can't forget Clemson as well. And Oklahoma, with everything playing their way, I thought the Kansas State loss might hurt them and had their chances missed. But when the opportunity was presented, they took advantage of it. So the rankings is right, and they got it right in that order.
I agree with you as well. I think standing right now, LSU, like you said, because of their quality of wins, their strength of schedule. And I agree, Oklahoma being 4th just for the simple fact that they did turn it on. Like you said, that big win against Oklahoma State, I think that in itself put them right back in the mix, because we talked about this a couple times. That could have been a trap game for them against their rival, and they found a way to get it done. And then, of course, beating Baylor, who could have possibly beat them, and they could have been in this position with them as well. The next question I got to ask you, and this has also been a topic for actually quite a few years now, and that is, should there be an 8-team playoff?
Yes, there should be an 8-team playoff, because you had other non-Power 5 conferences who also been undefeated and have one loss as well. For instance, like Memphis, the Conference USA, they won that in a long time, so that's their first Conference USA championship. Then you got the conference win, UCF and all the other teams, and so that could potentially open doors. Also, you can say a one-loss team from the same conference, like the SEC and Big Ten, could easily slide in there too. So I think, in my opinion, they should expand the college football playoff to 8 teams so they make it fair for everybody.
I strongly agree with that as well. And I think, do you think that will also help with scheduling? Because, like, you look at Alabama's schedule this year. I mean, it was probably one of the weaker schedules that we've seen, and ultimately it didn't end up in their favor anyway. Do you think that that'll stop taking pressure off of teams like in Alabama, like in Auburn, teams such as that, or like a Utah, for example, in which that one loss doesn't ultimately take them out of consideration?
Oh, absolutely. I think that you should expand it and be fair for everybody. And I think it'll be a good competitive matchups and see what happens. And I think it'll be good competitive, and anything can happen with an 8-team playoff.
I strongly agree with that as well. I'm pretty sure many people out there agree with that sentiment as well. Now, the next question that we have, obviously the former Memphis head coach, Mike Norvell, is now taking the helm down at Florida State. Mike, was this a good hire?
This was a very good hire, and some people didn't like it and they agree with it. But look what he did for Memphis. The time that he was at Memphis, his record was 37-15. That's impressive. 37-15. That is very impressive. He built that program from ground up, producing good quality quarterbacks, and he also hired the offensive coordinator from Memphis to join his staff. And I think with that recruiting connection, they can finally find a good quarterback to go along with the offense. It's going to take some time. It's not going to be an easy overnight fix, but he is the perfect fit for Florida State. And I think, give it about 2-3 years, Florida State will be back in the mix, and he'll get players buy into their system. And the recruiting is ridiculous. Not ridiculous. I should say, with the syllable in it, ridiculous. Right. And the recruiting is crazy, especially in the state of Florida, and the resume that you have. And you have quarterbacks that love the system. And he had quarterbacks that fit that mold and that offensive scheme that worked in Memphis. It beat Ole Miss, it beat SMU. Very good teams, but that one loss, it was a close competitive game. But that Memphis offense just took off. So he's bringing that same terminology to Florida State, and I think it's going to do some great things for that football program, and it'll change that culture and get back to the winning ways.
I agree with that as well. Not much to talk about because this name was floated around for quite some time and associated with Florida State. So at the end of the day, they got their guy and what he's going to do for that program. And we even talked about this towards the beginning of the season, and that is Memphis did come out of nowhere. And the way, like you said, the way he built it up, 37-15, kind of got them back on the radar. That's pretty impressive. Unfortunately, that won't happen in Memphis since Norvell's departure. But, I mean, I think it's well-deserved for him. That's going to do it for this second segment. But coming up, it is official. The 14 college playoff is set to go underway. LSU versus Oklahoma, Ohio State versus Clemson. We'll break down those matchups and give you our predictions. Who's going to move on to the national title game? Find out right here at Gameball College Kickoff, and we'll be back in a moment. What's happening, everyone? Welcome back to Gameball College Kickoff. Now it is time to break down the matchups of the college football playoffs, starting with LSU and Oklahoma. Mike, what do you like about this matchup?
Battle of the offenses. You got a higher power offense versus a high power offense. 1 tier and 2 tier. LSU is on the top of the tier. So Oklahoma's defense really got their hands full.
Yes, they do.
Because this LSU offense, I think it's the talented LSU offense I've seen in a long time, especially at the quarterback position. Jake Burrow, he is up for the Heisman candidate this upcoming weekend. And he's projected to be the first pick overall in next year's draft.
All right.
So, and the defense stepped up and showed out because the last few games they've been suspect because of injuries. Now they start getting their players back and they're balling. So it's going to come down to how does Oklahoma defense stop LSU's offense, and can Oklahoma's offense step up to a play against LSU's defense? If they can do that, they can get a potential upset win. If LSU just keep doing what they do and score points and play good defense, they're moving on to the national championship.
All right, LSU and Oklahoma, 2 good quarterbacks. That's going to be fun to watch. This matchup right here is also got to be very exciting. Justin Fields taking that high-powered offense of Ohio State and taking on another elite offense in the Clemson Tigers. Mike, what do you like about this one?
Well, Clemson is a complete team. Offense, defense, and special teams. They got one of the best defensive coordinators in game in Venables. And they play sound, disciplined football. And it's going to be another tough match for Ohio State. You can't afford to be behind because this is a Clemson team that is willing to prove everybody wrong. They got some dogs in them. They got rough riders. And they're going to come and show out. Can the Ohio State match that same intensity? And how will that defense be able to stop that Clemson offense with Trevor Lawrence and the crew, who's having a sensational year? The receivers, oh my goodness, they like height-wise 6'3" apiece. So it's going to be tough for Ohio State, and it's also going to be tough for Clemson to slow down Justin Fields. But I feel like they got the discipline of defensive coordinator to play gap assignment football and just control their lanes. If they can do that, the Clemson's moving on to the title game.
All right, sophomore quarterback versus sophomore quarterback. Fields and Lawrence, both sophomores and having sensational seasons. That's going to bring it to the predictions part of this 14 playoff. Mike, starting with LSU and Oklahoma. Who do you and Luke, excuse me, like?
Oh, that's cool. We both got LSU winning this matchup. LSU is just very talented offensively, and I don't see Oklahoma doing enough. And once LSU gets going, they're never looking back. So I'm going to say LSU beats Oklahoma Sooners 41-28. They're moving on the national title.
I agree with you guys. Better offense, better defense, more importantly. Give them credit for overcoming, obviously, losing that quarterback in Baylor. That, I think, kind of put the brakes on that a little bit. But I just think Joe Burrow is the better quarterback between these two. I think they'll find a way to put more points on that board. I'll say 35-21. I like LSU going on to the title game. Ohio State versus Clemson. Who you got in that one?
I got Clemson. That defensively, they're talented all over. Front seven, linebackers, secondary, and they're smart. They play good assignment control football, and they're the team that is built to stop a quarterback like Justin Fields of Ohio State. And they're going to force them to beat with their arm. I think they'll slow down and shut down the running game of J.K. Dobbins. So I like Clemson winning this one. And it's also the second matchup that they play, because last time they played in the college football playoff, Clemson just smacked Ohio State around. So I like Clemson winning this one. I'm going to say 41-20, Clemson gets it done.
41-20.
And Luke has Clemson winning as well.
I like Clemson just because of their offense. They can put up points quick, fast, and in a hurry. I agree. Up to this point, Justin Fields only has one interception. Can they find a way to force Justin Fields into making mistakes? He's one of the more efficient quarterbacks in the country. J.K. Dobbins, they're going to have to be physical. That's one thing Ohio State does have to do against Clemson. But I just think overall, Clemson's just going to find a way to score more points. If they get behind, like you said, against Clemson, they're never going to catch up with them. Their offense is just too high octane.
And their defense is underrated.
I agree with that completely. Clemson, give me a score. Give me 45. I'll say 45-24. I think they will actually stretch this out. I think they'll blow them out. National championship game, LSU and Clemson. Who do you like to win it all?
Luke has Clemson to win, and I got the LSU Tigers winning it all. First time since 2007. It's been over 12 years since they won a national championship. And I feel like this is their year. They're getting their swagger back. They got their quarterback who's projected to go into the top 5, number 1 pick overall. And LSU their weapons is just scary. It's gonna be a hell of a game, but I feel like LSU wins it by a close field goal to win the national championship. I'm gonna say LSU wins the national championship 28-24. LSU Tigers. Throw your L's up. Tiger fan nation, let's go LSU.
It's going to be a fun national title game. But I think the experience of Joe Burrow is really, and the fact that Clemson hasn't really seen a defense like this, I think also plays a key factor in it. LSU, I agree, wins the national championship 28-17 would be my score. And that's going to do it for this episode of Gameball Calls Kickoff. Social media, find me on Facebook, Marcus Jovel ENT Jenkins, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, at Jovel Entertainment. That is Jovel_Entertainment.
Social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Gmail, YouTube, all on my right side, and that'll be on your left side. So go to all social media platforms and all that good stuff, and get your gear on our clothing line website at gameballshop.ecwid.com. That's gameball.ecwid.com. Oh, I forgot the shop as well. Gameballshop.com. Gameballshop.ecwid.com. Excuse me. Also, go to our official website at gck-gnfle.com. That's gck-gnfle.com. And you can't forget our other brother Lou who couldn't make it here. Facebook, Instagram as Lou Harnett, and on Twitter as Lou Harnett too, because he's the real Harnett, folks.
I'm Marcus Young Genius Jenkins.
It's your boy Michael Riley.
And stick around for Gameball Info End Zone for your professional football fix. We'll see you then.